Hello, my name is Rag, and today I'm going to showcase to you exactly how I color grade. So what I have done is I've brought in a few different images or videos that I shot and kind of showcase my different styles of color grading that I kind of often show on my Instagram page. So here we have these five clips. So I'm using DaVinci Resolve 19, and DaVinci Resolve is simply a video editor that's very awesome at color grading, and you can get a free version of DaVinci Resolve in which everything that we're going to do today you can do on the free version. So what we'll do is we'll go into the color tab, which is just over here, and you can see on the right hand side we have what is called a node tree structure, and it looks a little bit complicated, but I'm going to keep it really simple. So basically what this node tree structure is, this is called Digifilm Power Grade, and everything that I post, everything that I grade, I use Digifilm Power Grade to color grade all my videos. So if I go to my gallery, you'll be able to see that I have the Digifilm Power Grade right here. So if I was to right click and press apply grade, it applies like a great starting look to my image, and here you can see the image looking good, but there's a lot of things we need to change. So this just really helps me speed up my workflow. So if I was to go to my CST, and this is where I'm going to input my color settings that I use. So for this I use my Sony a7S III with scam3.cine and slog3, and that'll give us a really good starting base. Now I know this may look a little bit complicated, but I'll go through exactly what I do to achieve that kind of look that you saw initially. So here we have this clip, it's looking good, but I think the white balance needs adjusting a little bit. So we'll go over to the next node, go over to my white balance, go over to my effects, go over to my Kelvin, which is what the temperature is kind of measured in, and simply make this a little bit warmer, but also shift the tint towards more of the greens, like so. So already we have a before and an after just with the white balancing tool. My apologies. Then we can go over to the exposure. The exposure seems to be pretty okay, but if it's not, you can use primary wheels here to kind of bring the levels down, or you know, if the highlights are kind of blowing out, you can bring the gain down if you wanted to. Alternatively, you can use the HDR wheels, but I don't think the HDR wheels are available in the free version of DaVinci Resolve. So for now we'll just use these. If you're thinking the shadows are a little too dark, you can use your lift, which is your shadows, and you can bring this up. So in these primaries where it says lift, gamma, gain, offset, so lift is your shadows, gamma is your midtones, gain is your highlights, and offset is just kind of your global image. So we have a really good starting point here, and what I actually want to do is isolate the red of this character right here, and what I'm going to do to do that is use my main objects over here. So these nodes right here are essentially my color masking and color separation nodes, which is being used in Digifilm, and essentially if I press Shift H, we're going to see a selection of what this node is actually being selected. If you wanted to readjust what the node is selecting, go to your qualify button here in your qualifier and click this, and that'll help you be able to select whatever you want to select. So if I was to press this, you can see that it's selected this red, but we want also this part of the red to be affected. But if I do this, you know, it's only selecting one area. So you can come over to the qualify plus button, which will be like it. Whatever's already been added, it'll add on to that. So then now if I was to press this, it's added this on pretty okay-ish, but we can do a lot better. So what I will do is actually kind of manually do this sometimes, and I'm simply just going to increase the width, increase the saturation, because I know the character is quite saturated with the reds, and I don't really want the darks to be affected too much. But overall, this is an okay kind of selection. And if I wanted to kind of make my selection a little bit nicer, you can come over to your matte finish on the right and just use these parameters to kind of, you know, de-blur, etc, etc. But to be fair, for now it's not too bad. So we have our character selected. Maybe we want the reds to be a lot more richer and to be a lot more full. So what you can do is you can go into your gain and you can add more reds. So now you can see we've selected our character, and we can make him any color that we'd like him to be. So we can actually take away all the reds, and we have this kind of neutral look on the character, which kind of looks pretty cool. But you can also go over to your gain and simply shift in this red here, which kind of looks also really cool. I can press wrong one. You can press the number 11 here. I'll just go back to where we were. I'll just shift this manually. If you want to see what this looked like without it, you can press Command D on this node, or Control D if you're using Windows, and you can see where we were from before to and after, and it's looking a little bit more on the pinky side, so maybe we shift this more towards the reds. Now, it's added the color of the red, but we want it to be a bit more dense. We want to fill in the reds a lot nicer, and to do that we can use our color slicing, which is a new feature on DaVinci Resolve 19. So now if I was to actually go into the density tool, you can see when I increase the density, it fills in the actual reds a lot nicer. So you have a before, let's do it again. So you have like a before and an after. And it just kind of stops the skin being like, not the skin, these reds, just like getting bright and stuff. So if I was to use saturation here, often when you add saturation through your saturation or your gain or whatever, you're going to be adjusting your luminance values, which is your brightness values. But sometimes you don't want that, as it might cause things to become too bright. But if you're using color slicing, it only really targets your saturation levels. If I'm using the saturation here, so if I was to increase this, you can see the luminance values are not actually changing, but we're adding red and it's filling in the skin super awesomely nice. That's good. That's a really good kind of point for where I like the reds to be. And then what I'm simply going to do, there are all of these nodes, but I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do with this one to keep it really simple. Go over to my global, and I'm simply just going to add some yellows and greens into the rest of the image to kind of get a bit more of a, I want to say like a Fight Club kind of look. So if I was to go over to my gamma and start shifting in greens this way, you can see a before and an after, and already this is looking pretty good. If I wanted to darken the image, I can use my curves. So highlights are here, midtones are here, shadows are here. And maybe if I wanted to add a little bit more green and yellows into the image, I can add some more through my gain and maybe add some blues to my shadows. So already we have a before, which is what we started with, to an after, and that's like a super easy quick grade. It only kind of maybe took a while because I was explaining it all, but this honestly is very, very quick and easy. So that's kind of how I graded this kind of look, and you can go more into it. There is a bloom node which will add a bit of bloom to your image. There is also a glow node here in which you can adjust your shine threshold and adjust the spread, so then you get this really cool glow effect on the headlights, really. So then you have a before and an after. And say if you didn't want it on the person, you just wanted it on the car, you can come over to your power windows, create this power window here. I don't really have to track it because the shot's not moving, but you have a before and an after, which is looking cool. And you can also add halation if you wanted to, using this node right here by turning this on. So that's a really good ending point for this one, I think. Then we can go over to our next clip, which is here, which is a lot more of a neutral, much more of a flat looking image. So we'll do the same process. We'll go over to a gallery. Maybe this time I use Digifilm 2.0, and then turn the gallery off. If you're wondering how to get access to Digifilm, you can simply just go onto my website or Melior's website, and you'll be able to download Digifilm right here. And there's a few other things included, such as I'll do one-on-one tutorials with you, and you get a whole big fat library of tutorials to kind of help you understand and use Digifilm a lot better. And you get access to a Discord server as well, of course. So here we've done the same thing. I'm going to go over to my CST, go to effects, and go down to sgamma3.cine, because I shot this on the A7S3 again. And this gives us a nice starting point. This time the exposure needs to be adjusted ever so slightly. You can be using your parades, but I've come pretty used to it. I can just use my eyes. So I can tell I want the image to be a lot not as bright. So this exposure right here, basically, it's not your final exposure. This is just kind of set your image to be able to color grade nicely. So you're basically trying to balance the image in a way. So if it's looking a little bit too bright, I can simply use my gain to kind of bring the information back in the highlights. I can use my HDR wheels, which I normally use, but for now we're just going to use the gain gamma offset left here. And this is a pretty good starting point. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to touch anything else. I'm just simply going to go over to my global because Digifilm's set such a nice starting point. All I have to do is go over to my global now. I'm just simply going to add some yellows to the image like this. And then I'm going to flatten the image using curves. So I'm going to make 1 point, 2 point, 3 point. I'm going to bring where the highlights are here down. Just really bring the image down like this. And then you can simply kind of play with it. Make 1 more point. Let's bring the image down. So we already have before and after. That's going to be a funky before and after. But maybe I'll just do the node. We have a before and an after, which kind of really flatten the image down. If you want to add more color, you can add more color. Here in Digifilm 2.0, we have HSV saturation, which adds saturation in a similar fashion to what we showed in, well, what I showed in color slicing over here. But I introduced this before color slicing was introduced in DaVinci Resolve, and to change HSV sat, we simply have to use our gain, and this will add saturation without affecting your luminance values or your contrast values for your saturation. So you can see it fills it in pretty nice. So maybe I'll have that here. That's looking good. If you didn't like the colors of the grass, I can use my color separation tools here again, but what I can also do is go over to my global, go over to my curves, go over to my hue versus hue, select this green, and it'll give me a kind of starting point for where it thinks that kind of green lies, and I can simply shift this. It's actually shifting the sky for some reason, but I kind of like that blue in the sky, so it's not actually selecting this green as well as I hope. So maybe what we can do is instead go to a main object, go over to this green, press Shift H. I don't want the selection to be this big, nor do I want the yellows to be affected. Like this. And then I can go over to my hue and simply shift this to become a more greeny color. So like this. If that's way too strong, go over to your saturation, just bring that down. Now you have a before and after with that. So it's a really, really easy way of changing colors, and this is a good way of kind of bringing colors, taking away colors within your frame. So in the next frame we have this kind of dark blue, wintry, blue-outy kind of look. So this is also very simple. I'll use Digifilm 2.5, go over to my CST, input your camera settings. If you just use an iPhone, you can still use something like Digifilm. All you have to put in is just Rec 709, unless using like the 15 Pro, the iPhone 15 Pro, and you're using Apple Log, then you input Apple Log, etc. So here, S-Log3 in this, I'm actually going to bring the exposure down ever so slightly with the gamma. I'm going to go over to my global and simply using my gain, start adding blues. Now, whenever you got to think about when it is winter time, when it is blue hour, what's the luminance values, what's the contrast levels of that time of day. Often the exposure levels when we're looking outside, it's often quite dark. So you got to kind of remember that and then bring the levels down to that to kind of match that kind of vibe and feeling. So I'm going to go over to my curves and really just bring the image down like this. I'm going to use my gain as well, and if it's a little bit too saturated in this sense, I can bring also the saturation down, and maybe from a general offset bring some color in. So this is almost you're slapping on a blue filter onto this almost, but in a really quick and easy fashion we've created this blue kind of hue look. And what's also really good is if you do have the studio version of DaVinci Resolve, you can go to HDR, and if I was to use this, you can see if you look at the sky, you can really push in color into specific areas using the HDR wheels. If I want to add even more blues to this, I can simply use this like this. And then finally you can come over to where it says red here. This is to control skin, but I can just reset this as it's mainly just for color slicing. Go over to my density and just increase the density, and I'll just fill in the rest of the image pretty nicely. If you want to add a bit more blue, increase the saturation. If it's then too strong, just bring it back over so slightly. And then you have this nice kind of blue hour wintry type of look. So that one was pretty simple and easy. The next image, which is this one, we'll try and create kind of like a light, nice and easy look. So I'll just get rid of all of this. Go over to make a new node. Apply grade. Now we have Digifilm. So I'm going to go over to my CST effects. Same thing, whatever camera, color space and gamma you used. Simply use this. Go over to your exposure. Go over to your. Again, we'll just use this. So you can see the image is a little bit too bright. I use the offset to bring back the image. And already you can see we have this really good starting point. We have a before and an after. And that's simply just from Digifilm, doing a CST, adjusting your exposure, and then you're good to go. The other things that I would change though, however, with this is contrast levels, as well as the colors of the grass. Maybe I want it to be a little bit more on the blue side rather than this yellowy grass, and maybe I want the water to pop out a little bit more. So what I can do is maybe I'll go over to my contrast here, simply increase the contrast levels like this. So before and then after, that's simply just with the contrast, which is awesome. I can use my main object, second object's background layer, but this time I'm trying to use this global node again, and this time I'll showcase to you the color warper. So if I was to select the grass here, you can see it says this grass falls here. So if I was to increase this, the grass gets a lot more saturated. But if I was to move this up or down, you can see I'll be able to change the hue of that grass. Like this. So already we have it before and after. You can see that grass becomes a little bit more on the blue side. So it's looking a lot more greeny because it was more yellow before. So this is looking cool. And now say we wanted the blues to pop out a little bit more, select the blue and then bring this up ever so slightly like this, and then we have it before and then after, and already we have this nice, much more saturated looking image. Again, you can come over to your color slicing here. I'll reset this, maybe I'll increase the density of the image ever so slightly. No, leave that. Go to my saturation and however poppy, however much you wanted to make the image pop in terms of color, you can do that as well. So you have a before and after, and that's with color slicing right there. And whenever you're color grading, you don't need to go super hard on a certain thing. Just often with color grading, whether it's photos or videos, doing loads of small things will often result in quite a large change in the end. You don't need to always make big changes all the time, but sometimes if you make a big change and it looks great, go for it. If the sky is looking a little bit hazy like on this side, we can maybe make one more node by pressing Alt or Option S, and I'll go over to my power windows, make a gradient window, push it this way, press Shift H to see your selection like this, press Shift H, and I'm simply just gonna go over to my HDR wheels and bring down this side ever so slightly. So you have a before and an after, and just kind of brought back some of the details within that specific corner. If you want to also add color, you can add color like this, and then you have before and an after like this. And if you want to bring it down even more like this, before and an after, and you have this really nice kind of looking image that we have. So before and an after. So that's, again, super quick and easy, using very simple tools to color grade, and hopefully I'm showcasing to you how color grading honestly just completely changes the look and feel of your videos. The next video is this one here. I'll try and create a bit more of a filmy look, maybe or something like a taxi driver or something. Well, I use Digifilm 2.5 again, and we have the starting point. Again, CST. Oh no, what I'll showcase to you is how to copy and paste color grades. So I get rid of all this, make a new node, Alt S or Option S, yes. You have this clip here that we've already color graded, so I want to create a similar look maybe. So I'll right click, press apply grade, and you can see we've created this look already. So we've gone from before and after just from copying that grade from this to this. So if you have like multiple clips that are from a very similar scenario or scene, you can simply just copy and paste the grades. You don't have to do them individually again and again. You can select them all and then right click on whatever you want to copy from and press apply grade. So this is a nice starting point. But what I might want to do is make it a little bit more filmic. So what I will do is let's get rid of this and I'll turn this main object off. Actually, that main object kind of helps kind of controlling those reds a little bit. Here we're going to use these film nodes. So if I was to turn the film node on here, and then we can turn on the grain and the blur and the halation to adjust the halation. You're going to go right click on your halation, go to your adjustment node, and then simply go over to this blur tool and then go to your radius, and you can simply increase this to get a much stronger halation or weaker halation. Actually, I'll turn the film node off for now. I'm going to leave this because I think it looks a little bit better. But now with these two nodes, you can have a before. No. Yeah, before and then after. This kind of helps to soften the image out, because if often you're kind of replicating a 35 or 60mm look, because we often shoot with digital cameras, they're very sharp. And you kind of want to take off that edge by using the blur tool. So we have this kind of look, and since we've copied over the look from the previous of the guy in the rain, it's created this kind of greeny, yellowy kind of look. But say you wanted a bit more of a teal and orange, I'll reset this, add some blues to the shadows like this. That's looking pretty nice. And with the gain, I'm going to add oranges to the image, so then you have a before and an after, and simply just by using primaries. If you wanted to adjust your halation, you can do that. I just did that for showcase purposes. We have the bloom on, by the way. If you want to turn the bloom off, you can. If you wanted more bloom, you can come into this node simply to find more options for the bloom. Right click on the bloom, show compound node, and you have all your looks right here. And then we can come back, and then if you wanted to add a vignette, turn this on, it'll add a slight vignette to your image. You can adjust the vignette using this right here and adjusting your gain, darken out the image so you have before and after. Just kind of bring a little bit more kind of emphasis on the center part right here. I'll just get rid of the halation for now, as I think it is a little bit distracting. But we have this nice cool look, and I'll go to my contrast. I will add a little bit more contrast before and after. And if you press play, it's looking good. If you're having problems with these reds, go over to your CST, go over to saturation preserving. Nope, wrong one. DaVinci saturation compression, and that should hopefully fix it. And then you can adjust it however you wish, like this. And then you have this kind of cool look. If you wanted to then go to your reds, add some density to your imagery, you can kind of do this. Maybe I wanted to add more saturation. Maybe I wanted to add the image more dense. Pretty nice. And then if you wanted to add more color, simply do this by shifting even more colors into the image like this. And you have this kind of a cool look. So that was really, well, I would say quick. This was like 20 minutes long, but that is essentially how I go about my color grading process and how I create different types of looks in DaVinci Resolve. As I mentioned, I do use Digifilm to basically color grade everything, simply because it's just how my workflow works, and it gives me a really good starting point to kind of start my grade off from. And it has a lot of tools that I can just turn on, do a quick adjustment, and go from there instead of having to build out my node tree again and again and again. So yeah, I hope that was somewhat helpful, and yeah, I look forward to seeing your grades. So yeah, thank you.